What if I told you there's someone in the universe who can walk into a room full of admirals, give a single command, and they follow without question? No rank, no medals, just a white coat and the power to save lives. In today's story, witness how true authority doesn't always come from command, it comes from purpose. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and show a thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's jump into the story. Commander Rovik stood on the observation deck of the Joint Orbital Station circling Mars, his pale blue eyes blinking slowly as he studied the activity below. Humans, with their noisy machines and even noisier speech, moved in organized chaos. Their ships arrived with flair, their soldiers shouted commands with confidence, and everything seemed like a well-practiced performance. To Rovik, a senior observer from the Travari Alliance, it was both impressive and confusing. As an expert in military systems, he believed he had finally made sense of how humans ran their operations: strict ranks, flashy uniforms, and a rigid chain of command. That belief was about to be shattered. From his elevated position, Rovik watched a large human cruiser dock at Bay 4. A tall man in a dark blue uniform, shining with medals and embroidered symbols, barked orders as soldiers and cargo handlers moved quickly around him. Rovik scanned the man's profile on his datapad. Commander Jordan Mace, it read, along with a long list of honors and achievements. All of it aligned perfectly with Rovik's understanding of human military authority. Everything made sense until she arrived. A small figure, no taller than a standard Travari adolescent, stepped into the scene. She wore white. No shiny medals, no rank patches, no markings at all, aside from a simple symbol on her chest, a coiled snake around a stick. She had a calm face, a ponytail that bounced slightly as she walked, and a small black bag in her hand. Rovik frowned. Civilians were not permitted to interfere with military operations. He tapped his translator device to make sure he wasn't missing anything. Then the woman spoke, her voice rising clear and confident above the clamor. "Commander Mace," she said firmly, "we've got 3 critically wounded incoming. They need to be moved now. Your cargo can wait." Rovik's lower mandible twitched in disbelief. Did she just interrupt a ranking officer in the middle of a coordinated operation? He expected shouting, maybe even an arrest. Instead, something even more shocking happened. Commander Mace turned toward her, nodded, and called out, "You heard her. Clear the bay. Medics now." The entire scene shifted. Soldiers who had been unloading boxes immediately changed course. Equipment was pushed aside. Space was cleared. Rovik's antennae stood straight with confusion. What just happened? He whispered aloud, forgetting for a moment that he was alone. Rovik frantically accessed his reference files. He searched for any known rank or title associated with the symbol the woman wore. Nothing came up. "Unknown designation," the screen displayed. He zoomed in on her image, analyzing her posture, facial expressions, and tone. No signs of aggression or manipulation, only urgency and focus. Moments later, more wounded humans were carried into view on floating stretchers. The woman in white now, clearly some kind of medical professional, began giving rapid instructions. Not one person questioned her. Even a high-ranking officer, identified by Rovik's pad as Admiral Sora Valen, stepped aside when the woman approached and said, "Coming. Through this one's crashing." Rovik's limbs felt cold. None of this made sense. In the Travari system, rank was visible, color-coded, and absolute. Orders flowed from the top. Disobedience, especially in public, was unthinkable. Yet here was this unranked woman commanding. Everyone with a quiet authority that was followed without delay. Just then, his assistant, a young observer named Kellen, approached. "Commander Rovik, are you all right? You look disoriented." Rovik nodded slowly, never taking his eyes off the scene below. "Kellen, I believe we are witnessing something that defies every rule of military order as we know it." That woman. She has no title, no insignia, and yet. She leads, Kellen finished quietly. Yes, Rovik said, his voice almost reverent. And not with force, with purpose. This must be documented. He turned and began tapping on his datapad, creating a new research file labeled White Coat Anomaly. His first note: authority observed without formal power structure. Possible cultural override of traditional hierarchy. Further investigation required. Kel Wine leaned closer. Do you think she's a higher kind of officer? One they don't advertise? Rovik chuckled lightly. Perhaps. Or perhaps we've missed something fundamental about human society. They respect skill more than symbols. Below, the woman was now kneeling beside a patient, giving instructions to two medics while checking a portable monitor. Even without knowing the technical details, Rovik could tell she was in control. People trusted her. They moved with her, not just because she told them to, but because they believed she knew exactly what to do. A sudden realization hit him like a meteor impact. Kellen, he said slowly, what if this woman is not the exception? What if she is the key to understanding a different kind of leadership? Kellen looked uneasy. Then we might need to rewrite everything we thought we knew. Rovik nodded. Yes, and we start now. Prepare a series of interviews. Focus on medical personnel. I want to know who trains them, how they earn that respect, and why even admirals make way when they speak. As Kellen ran off to carry out the order, Rovik turned back to the bay. The woman in white was standing again, giving quiet instructions. Someone brought her a cup of dark liquid coffee, the humans called it. She took a sip and smiled faintly before returning to her work. Commander Rovik watched her, awe building in his chest. She had no stripes, no stars, no rank that anyone could see. But on that landing bay, in that moment, she was the highest authority there. The sun on Ganymede never truly set. It hung like a cold spotlight over the icy surface, casting long shadows across the joint training facility where human and Travari troops drilled together in perfect, or at least, attempted coordination. Captain Final, a seasoned Travari squad leader, stood at the edge of the field, his long arms crossed over his chest as he observed the latest exercise. Human soldiers barked commands at one another, while Travari units moved with mechanical precision. Despite the chaos, Final had to admit that the humans were effective, loud, unpredictable, but somehow always adaptable. From a high tower nearby, Commander Rovik and his assistant Kellen watched as well, continuing their quiet investigation into the phenomenon they now called the white coat factor. Rovik had not stopped thinking about the woman from the Mars station, the one who had taken control without rank. He had reviewed the footage over and over again, and he couldn't deny the true authority, did not always wear a badge. Then, the exercise changed. A simulated explosion rocked the East training field. It wasn't part of the drill. A real fire had broken out in one of the storage domes. Panic followed. Smoke poured from the dome as sirens began to wail. Soldiers shouted over each other, unsure of whether to follow protocol or react with instinct. Final rushed toward the command hub, trying to contact his superior officer. Before he could reach the door, a voice rang out, not loud, but sharp and clear. No one go near the east corridor. We have active fire and chemical exposure. Set up a perimeter immediately. Final turned to see a human woman striding across the platform. She wore the same white coat Rovik had seen before, plain, with no markings, only that snake and stick symbol over her heart. Her name tag read Dr. Lita Morell, a medic, it seemed. But the moment she spoke, everyone stopped. Fire suppression drones need to access the lower vent. Move that crate now. You with the red helmet, get the emergency oxygen units from Bay C. Soldiers obeyed without question. One even saluted her before running off. Final approached her, puzzled. Doctor, he said cautiously. You are not in the command structure. Who authorized you to take charge? Dr. Morell didn't stop walking. She barely glanced at him as she replied, No one. People are in danger, and I know how to keep them alive. That's all the permission I need. Final blinked. In Travari tradition, any deviation from assigned roles was considered insubordination. But there was nothing reckless about her tone, just certainty. She turned to a nearby officer. Lieutenant, clear the lower corridor. The air samples show ammonia traces. We're sealing that section off now. The lieutenant, despite being senior in rank, followed her command without hesitation. By now, Commander Rovik had arrived on the scene with Kellen. He watched, quietly recording everything. There it is again, he murmured. That same invisible force. Kellen, eyes wide, nodded. She speaks, and everyone moves. Dr. Morell reached the injured near the training zone. Without pause, she dropped to her knees beside a groaning Travari soldier, pulled a scanner from her coat, and began treatment. She didn't even ask for help, just gave instructions. 2 human medics rushed to her side, followed by a Travari field nurse who removed his own rank badge before stepping. Final stood there, stunned. He had led dozens of missions. He had memorized protocol and studied military hierarchy since his youth. Yet here was a woman, soft-spoken and dressed like a civilian, turning chaos into order with nothing but calm direction. Nearby, a human commander tried to reassert control. Dr. Morell, he began, I appreciate your help, but we have procedures for, we're past procedures. She interrupted, not unkindly. If you want people to live, you'll follow my lead for the next 30 minutes. And he did. Final turned to Rovik, who was scribbling furiously into his data. Pad, is this the same kind of doctor you saw before? Rovik nodded slowly. Yes, different person. Same presence. Dr. Morell finished stabilizing the injured soldier and stood. Her coat was stained, her hair slightly singed from the heat, but she was composed. She looked around at the crowd, pointed at a communications officer, and said, Send a signal to the emergency teams. Let them know air quality is stabilizing. And someone get me water, please. She said please, but it was clear that the word was not optional. Later that evening, as calm returned to the training base, Rovik sat in the debriefing chamber with Final and Kellen. A screen showed clips from the incident. Over and over, the footage showed soldiers, human and Travari, listening, reacting, following this woman in white. She never asked for control, Final said softly. She just had it. Rovik looked at the recording and made a new note. In moments of uncertainty, people follow the one who knows what to do. Not always the one with the title. At that moment, Dr. Morell entered the room, holding a fresh report in one hand and a steaming cup of coffee in the other. I heard you're studying command structures, she said with a knowing smile. Well, I don't wear bars or stars. I wear this coat because it lets me help people. If that makes me a leader, so be it. Without waiting for a reply, she left the room. Final stared after her, shaking his head. I've never followed anyone without rank before. Rovik smiled faintly. You just did. And I suspect it won't be the last time. The peace vessel drifting above Europa was calm on the outside, but inside, tension buzzed like a live wire. Leaders from both human and Travari fleets had gathered there for a diplomatic summit, meant to strengthen trust between their species. General Nadia Soren, one of Earth's most respected military strategists, stood at the front of the central hall with her arms crossed, her sharp eyes scanning the room. Across from her, Envoy Tiver of the Travari Council adjusted his translation earpiece. The room was full of polished uniforms, shining medals, and perfectly aligned rank stripes. Everything about the event screamed control, structure, and hierarchy, until someone collapsed. The sudden thud echoed through the hall. A human technician, standing by the air filtration panel, crumpled to the floor, gasping for breath. Another fell moments later. The summit stopped cold. Conversations halted. Every eye turned toward the fallen figures as a quiet alarm began to beep softly low level, then growing louder. A murmur rippled through the room as others began to cough. Panic wasn't far off. General Soren grabbed her communicator. Medical team to conference hall, immediately. Possible airborne contaminant. That's when the door burst open and Dr. Elin Kaur stepped inside. He didn't look like much tall. Lean, more like a professor than a warrior. No rank badge on his coat, no shining medals. Just a simple white uniform, clean and unadorned. And that same strange symbol worn by others like him. A snake curled around a rod. His glasses slipped a little as he surveyed the room. Everyone. "Stay calm," he said, voice low but firm. "No one moves until I know what we're dealing with." General Soren narrowed her eyes. "Dr. Kaur, with respect, we have protocols for this." Dr. Kaur didn't flinch. "And I have patients who are losing oxygen. Right now, I'm in charge." Soren didn't argue. Not because she was weak, but because something in his voice, some quiet certainty, cut through the fear better than any shouted order. Dr. Kaur strode to the fallen technician, kneeling quickly. He opened his med pack, scanning vitals, whispering to the assistant beside him, "Get an oxygen mask on him now. And seal that filtration panel." Envoy Tiver watched closely, confusion in his gaze. "He wears no sign of leadership," he murmured to his aide, "and yet they all follow him." One of the summit guards stepped forward to help. Dr. Kaur handed him a sealed injector. "Use this. Then help the second patient. We're dealing with a synthetic airborne agent, something released intentionally." Soren turned sharply. "Intentional? Are you saying this was sabotage?" "Possibly," Kaur replied, not looking up. "But I'll leave that to your intelligence. Officers, my job is to keep these people alive." He gave orders with simple words, always calm, never shouting. And everyone moved, staff officers, security teams. Even General Soren stood aside when Dr. Kaur told her, "Step back, your uniform might be carrying particulates." The room transformed. Where confusion had ruled minutes ago, now a system formed built entirely on one man's voice. Kaur didn't bark orders like a general. He didn't demand loyalty. He earned it, second by second, with every choice he made to protect others. From the observation gallery above, Commander Rovek watched intently. This was not the first time he had witnessed a doctor take control, but it still amazed him. Every time, it was the same: no rank, no insignia, just quiet direction that moved mountains. His assistant, Kellen, leaned closer. "How do they do it, sir?" "Even their most powerful leaders, generals, admirals, step aside when the doctor arrives." "It's respect," Rovek replied, "but not the kind you earn with power. It's something older, deeper." Dr. Kaur now stood in the center of the room, giving an update. "Contamination has been neutralized. Air systems are flushing now. We've identified the agent. It was fast-acting but weak, likely meant as a scare, not a real attack. No casualties." A ripple of relief swept across the hall. People began to breathe again, literally and figuratively. As the cleanup continued, General Soren approached Kaur. "You acted without official clearance, Doctor. You bypassed the entire summit command chain." Kaur took a sip from the water bottle someone had handed him. "You're welcome." Soren raised an eyebrow, then laughed softly. "You're lucky I respect you." "No," Kaur replied. "You respect life. I just reminded you what matters most when things go wrong." Behind them, Envoy Tiver stepped forward. "Doctor, I must ask, how does someone without rank command the attention of an entire room?" Dr. Kaur smiled. "Because in moments of crisis, people don't look for titles. They look for answers." And there it was. Rovek made a final note on his tablet. Doctors do not follow the command structure. The command structure follows them when it must. Authority earned not through rank, but through knowledge, clarity, and unwavering purpose. As the summit resumed, quieter now and far more humble, Commander Rovik realized this phenomenon could not be charted or labeled. It had no rules, no colors, no stripes. It lived in the eyes of those who had held a life in their hands and chosen action over protocol. It was not loud. It did not demand. It simply commanded. The emergency call came without warning. A civilian space station orbiting near Neptune had suffered a systems failure in its environmental controls. Reports were unclear. Some mentioned toxic air leaks, others spoke of medical alarms being triggered across the habitat. Within minutes, the human fleet and Travari ships scrambled to respond. Dozens of vessels changed course, forming a scattered and confused pattern as commanders tried to make sense of what was happening. Orders overlapped. Channels buzzed with questions. No one seemed certain who should take the lead. In the midst of the growing chaos, Dr. Lena Morell, seated on the medical frigate Horizon Wing, calmly stood up, adjusted her white coat, and walked straight to the bridge. The captain, a decorated naval officer, turned toward her, clearly ready to block her way. But before he could speak, Lena raised one hand. "We don't have time to argue," she said quietly. "Route me through to all ships, now." Something in her voice stopped the captain mid-sentence. He gave a short nod and stepped aside. Moments later, Lena's voice echoed through every ship in the response fleet. "This is Dr. Morell, Chief Medical Officer aboard the Horizon Wing. All vessels are to maintain a minimum distance of 40,000 kilometers from the civilian station until we confirm environmental safety. Prepare your medical bays and quarantine zones. Triage teams will be dispatched once air levels stabilize." There was no hesitation. Ships adjusted positions. Communications channels went silent, as if the entire fleet had suddenly been reminded what mattered most. A few captains opened their mouths to protest, then closed them again. Watching from the Travari command ship, Commander Rovik blinked slowly. "She's not even military," he whispered. Beside him, his assistant Kellen smiled faintly. "Doesn't seem to matter, does it?" Within minutes, Dr. Morell was aboard the civilian station with her team. No armor, no weapon. Just that white coat and a small case of medical tools. The station was dim and eerily quiet, lit only by emergency lights. She walked through the hallways with purpose, calmly checking vitals, giving instructions, and coordinating with both human and Travari personnel. Her voice stayed steady, even when the station's second generator failed and the lights flickered. "We'll need to reroute power from the cargo bays. And I need 3 medics on Deck C now. We've got exposure cases showing early symptoms." Back in orbit, 2 admirals, 1 human, 1 Travari, stood side by side watching the live feed. The Travari admiral tilted his head, puzzled. "Why are none of your senior commanders down there with her?" The human admiral didn't look away from the screen. "Because she didn't wait for permission. She just went. And we've learned not to get in her way when she does." On the station, Lena approached a young soldier slumped against the wall, barely conscious. She scanned his oxygen levels, adjusted his mask, and signaled a nurse to bring fluids. The soldier managed a weak smile. "Doc," he whispered, "are you really in charge?" "No," she replied, inserting an 4. "I'm just the one who knows what needs to happen." By the end of the 4th hour, the station's air filtration had been stabilized, contaminated sections sealed, and every critical patient moved to safety. Not a single life was lost. As the last patient was wheeled into the medical bay, Lena finally sat down, brushing sweat from her forehead. Commander Rovik approached, datapad in hand, eyes filled with quiet awe. "Doctor," he said softly, "I've studied dozens of human officers. I've mapped your ranks, reviewed your protocols. But every time you act, None of those things seemed to apply. Lena looked at him, tired but still alert. That's because in medicine, authority doesn't come from the top down. It comes from knowing how to save someone and being willing to do it without delay. Rovik nodded slowly, absorbing her words. We have no equivalent. In Travari structure, no one moves unless the rank above commands it. She smiled. Then maybe it's time to update your system. Later, in a formal debriefing held aboard the Travari flagship, senior officials gathered to hear the report. Rovik stood before them, flanked by Kellen and a projection of Dr. Morell. He cleared his throat before speaking. There is no official rank that explains the influence of human medical officers. They override hierarchy, shift command, and adjust priorities without resistance. But this is not due to force or regulation. It is due to trust. Their authority is earned through action, knowledge, and clarity in crisis. The room fell silent as the image of Lena treating a patient filled the screen. Rovik continued, when a doctor speaks, others listen, not because they must, but because deep down, they know it could mean the difference between life and death. At that moment, a message came through the fleet's shared channel. It was from Lena herself. I'd like to invite any interested Travari medical personnel to an emergency response training next week. And yes, we'll have coffee. Good coffee. Soft laughter rippled through the room. Rovik smiled, making his final note. Authority that wears a white coat may never fit into a diagram, but it is real. And in the eyes of those who have been saved, it is the highest command of all. In the end, there was no ceremony, no medal, no speech. Just a quiet woman in a white coat who saved lives and walked away with only a tired smile. And yet, to every person who had seen her work, she would always be the one they trusted most without needing a title to prove it.